Oh, hey, guys. Hey, welcome on this Monday night. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome to Dark Society Paranormal Podcast. I am Shane McLean. It is a pleasure being here, and I look so forward to the guests that we have tonight. I hope you guys are ready, and we're going to get this thing, we're going to kick it off. And could you please bring my guest on?
Hello.
Hey guys, this is Larry Eissler the third. That's the third, right?
Third. That's
That's
right.
awesome. That's
Uh,
awesome. It's so good to have you here, man.
I'm excited. I got to make sure I get this live shirt out so everybody can pop in on it too.
Oh
There
yeah,
we go.
oh yeah. That's what
Got
that's what my wife's doing right now. She's sharing it all out everywhere too.
yeah.
Um, Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Sure. Well, I'm an author, a historian, filmmaker, paranormal researcher. I have my fingers in a little bit of everything in the paranormal. So it's like being the jack of all trades. You're good at a little bit of everything, but not great at one thing. So I dig it. I like writing books. I like making documentaries and shows and speaking and investigating, and I really enjoyed doing it all. The only thing that I have never gotten into, and I probably won't, is the demonology side. I will leave
Oh,
that to the experts.
okay. All right. Yeah. I am the resident demonologist and clergy for Spur.
Sure.
So I completely understand that because it's not for everybody, but
Right.
it is for everybody when you're wanting to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, filmmaking is kind of the same thing. It's really not for everybody. Can anybody pick up their phone and shoot some video? Absolutely. Can anybody claim they're talking to a demon? Absolutely. But what you and I do are completely different from everybody else trying it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And the thing is everybody that I talk to about it, they're like, "Oh, I want to do that," and and I try to tell them, I said, you're taking a risk.
oh yeah.
You're taking a risk because if you try to go in these cases like it's a location investigation, and you're trying to go at whatever is there, then you know you can be affected, and everybody with you can too. And
Absolutely.
and I don't, and I try to tell people the pros and cons on both,
Yeah,
so, but you said you're a writer.
I am.
How about some of the stuff that you write, man? Like is it all paranormal? Is it horror? Like what is it?
So right now, I have three published books. Technically four, but we don't talk about the first one. It was like 2012. I did the editing on it. It's not great. We just pretend that one doesn't exist. Um, so in excluding that one, the first one is The Ghost of the Black Hawk War. It's half history, half paranormal. So you get an idea of the Black Hawk War of 1832, and chronologically we start from the very beginning and go up until Black Hawk's forces crossed into Wisconsin. And the book covers all the sites from Illinois that we could find. You're talking almost 200 years ago. A lot of sites don't exist anymore.
Wow.
They're in the middle of somebody's cornfield now, or where somebody built their house. That's where somebody died, so we can't access that spot anymore. But we wrote that book as part of our research study into the war, and found a lot of locations that nobody knew where they were, and found a lot of spirits that had a lot of things to say.
Wow.
So we're currently working on the Wisconsin half of that book, and then one day, research studies take a long, long time, especially in Illinois and Wisconsin, where you get to fight against the winter, where the air likes to burn your face off.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's brutal. But one day we'll get the whole study completed, and it'll be a completed work.
That's
Um,
amazing. And I've noticed like you just said about that war, that's something that's not like highly talked about.
oh,
Uh
it's never talked about.
That's what I mean.
Never
That's
talk.
what I mean. And when
Yeah.
I saw that you did that, and I was like, wow, let me look at that, and then I found out, and then I was like, that is so interesting. And so, I mean, were you familiar with it before you started going? And were you familiar with the history of it and
No.
stuff like that?
No. So my paranormal partner Dan and I started investigating together in, I want to say, 2010. Um, and he was the one that introduced me to the first battle site, which is Stillman Valley, Illinois. It's called the Battle of Stillman's Run. At the time, he knew a little bit about the war. I didn't know anything. And it was a spot where it's technically a cemetery because there's 9 burials on the grounds there, but it's also not designated a cemetery. It's designated a park. And the park has no dusk hours. So the
Oh
park's
wow!
open 24 hours a day. You could be in there at 3 o'clock at night and the police won't bother you.
So anybody can go in.
Anybody. But
Wow.
the neighbors watch it like a hawk. So you have to approach it the correct way, respectfully, right? But when you go there for like 8 years, several times a month, they get to know you and they realize, oh, it's Dan and Larry, they're fine. So
Oh,
Dan introduced me to that spot, and this was early on in the paranormal for me. So every EVP, every K2 hit was like amazing, right? Like I hadn't experienced that. But they were extremely talkative, very active. They were all stuck on the premises at that time. So they were all, technically ghosts. And as we're talking to them, we start asking questions like, well, wait, why is this called Stillman's Run? So you start looking into the stuff. And then the history starts to form the questions the next time you go. You know what I'm saying? So
awesome.
we start asking questions like, well, wait, well, if this is Stillman's Run and Stillman, led your troops, how did you feel about him? Did you think he was a coward? Yes. Oh,
Oh
okay.
wow.
So you start reading a little bit more, and it's like, well, this isn't where you guys camped. Where did you guys camp? Oh, well, we're not getting anything clear. Is it that way? Is it that way? Is it that way? Yes. So you start looking into that. Look, where was the campsite? And all of a sudden, we start looking into these other sites that are tied to the war. Kellogg's Grove, Wadham's Grove, the Apple River Fort, all these sites where it's like they're spirit too. They're all involved in the war. And one day, I don't even know why or how it even happened, but Dan's like, we should write a book about this.
Mm,
Like, okay, sure.
mm.
So, we write the first book, and I read so much. Blackhawk's autobiography, a lot of personal accounts were like letters between people because it's 1832. There wasn't great documentation yet. So you have like journal entries and letters and stuff like that. You have to dig all this stuff out. And the funny thing is, I got to my university where I got my bachelor's degree in history,
Oh yeah.
and they're like, hey, you could pretty much write about anything as long as it fits the time frame. Well, for a lot of my classes, 1832 happened to fit the time frame, or at least the subject matter. If it was like a military history class, well, this is a war, it's military history. So I start writing about the Black Hawk War of 1832, and none of my professors that have their doctorate knew about the war, so they had to research the war to be able to grade.
Oh wow.
And when we're talking about a university that's 40 minutes away from the first battle site, that's how little known this war was.
I wonder why. I mean, you would think, with being a war that I mean, even the locals and I mean,
Hmm.
they had no history or nothing documented about it.
Yeah, I'll give you one better. The Black Hawk War of 1832 was one of the, if not the last major skirmishes between the Native Americans and the U.S. government before the Trail of Tears got rid of all of them. So
Oh,
that was like the final nail in the coffin. And then they're just like, get them out, they got to go. They committed war against us. They killed a good amount of people. I mean, we killed more of them, obviously, but they killed a good amount of people. And for about a year and a half, they paraded Black Hawk around like a celebrity POW.
mm,
And then they all got to go. So then across the Mississippi they went, and well, we know the Trail of Tears wasn't always the greatest event, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
died on that trail.
Yeah.
But even this war is tied into that. But for
Mm.
some reason, it's like no one ever really talks about it. Everyone knows Black Hawk. Like Black Hawk's a very well-known name.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks he's a chief, but he's not a chief. He was a war chief. His job was war, but he wasn't a chief of the tribe. So
Oh,
there's a lot
yeah.
of
Usually with a
misconceptions
name
about his
like
name.
that, it would be the chief.
War chief. Actually, the Sauk tribe was very democratic. They had people whose job was responsible for one particular aspect for the tribe, and they all had to get together to talk about things before a decision was made.
Mm.
So, in the Treaty of St. Louis in 1804, someone made or ratified a treaty on behalf of the tribe that wasn't allowed to, and it kind of screwed everything up for the Sauk. That's how they ended up losing almost two, if not half, maybe 2/3 the state of Illinois. That was
Oh,
their
wow.
territory, and they lost it all for a bad treaty trade, including their ancestral city called Saukenok, which is present day Rock Island, Illinois,
Oh, wow.
and it's gone for next to nothing. So this
Wow.
really upset Black Hawk, and there's reasonings of why that's tied to the war. Like he was going to get Saukenok back. He wanted to see it one more time. He was told he can live in another tribe's village. A lot of theories, but the fact of the matter is he did cross into Illinois. He declared war by doing that, according to us. And then when the skirmish happened at present day Stillman Valley, now you're in the thick of it, and we have a 4.5, 4 month and 3 week war.
Mm.
That's all it was. It was about 4 months and 3 weeks, I believe, and it ended in the what is it? Bad Axe massacre. So either the Bad Axe massacre or the massacre at Bad Axe.
Wow.
It's got a messed up name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Approximately 400 to 500 Native Americans stood on the shore of the Mississippi River, swam through the Mississippi River, got onto an island in the middle of the Mississippi River, and were gunned down by a gunboat.
Oh my gosh. It was almost like a setup almost.
So kind of. They're in full retreat now, right? Like the war is winding down. They're getting picked off left and right. They're traveling through Wisconsin, and the Army regulars are right behind them, just nipping at their heels, literally, like picking people off in the back. And they get pushed into the Mississippi where the gunboats are waiting. Now there was one attempt at surrender. Black Hawk and the captain, and then a bunch of other people of one of the ships were discussing things, and something happened. It's not entirely sure exactly what happened. There's theories. People have written about, this one person that was manning the gunboat. They thought they saw something and they opened fire on the beach. Once the fire opened up, everybody else was like, "Oh God, something happened! Open fire too!" And it was a bloodbath. So that's how
Wow.
the war technically ended.
That's
Uh,
that's that's wild. Now, are there places built, like on where the battles were, like buildings, cemeteries, were things
kind of.
built on top of that? Because you said it wasn't really a talked about. So, I mean, if it wasn't talked about like that, what did the town do? Just kind of build on it and want to forget about the past?
So for Stillman, Stillman very much embraces that history. I mean, the town's named after the coward that led the militia. So
Oh,
I think they picked the wrong dude. It should be it should be named after Captain John Gals Adams. So like Adams Valley would be much more fitting.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
make the rules, so whatever, cool. But they have this beautiful, beautiful monument that's got the Illinois militiaman at the top of it. It's absolutely huge, and they take very good care of that site. There are some sprinklings of little sites for some of the smaller skirmishes where it does mention the Black Hawk War on like a plaque, or on like a stand, but that's about it.
mm,
Not until you get to Kellogg's Grove, which has another really neat monument site. That's actually the cover of our book for the Black Hawk War, is the one at Kellogg's Grove.
oh,
Um,
okay,
It covers a decent amount of the history of the war, but that site, it's out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farmland, so it's still
Mm.
not like a majorly visited location. And
Mm.
then everything else, it's just plaques on the side of the road.
Oh
That's
wow.
all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
This is amazing conversation. Not only history, but I'm going to ask about the paranormal aspect of it. Gwen, are you still on?
my dog.
Gwen, are you still on?
I'm here. Yeah,
Could you I see we got some comments coming in. I don't want people to think that I'm forgetting about them.
that's
Guys,
right. You can't
I
read them
see.
from your
I,
phone. Yeah.
yes, ma'am, please, if you can, because I know we got some people wanting to ask some questions too.
Let's see. We got. I'm gonna tell you who's here. We got Alicia and
Hello, Alicia.
Alicia is
um,
from Eternal Paranormal,
Yep.
which is down by
Yeah.
Rock Island. So
yeah, that's what she was saying. She was very close.
yeah.
Of course, we got Victoria, Tracy, who watches it all. Thank
Hey,
you.
Victoria. Hey, Tracy.
Virgil Kane,
Hey, Virgil. I didn't forget about you, brother.
Aaron Wing.
Aaron. That's my
Yeah.
team director.
There you go. We got Talia.
Talia. Hey, Talia. That's
We
Mother
got-
Talia.
and then we got Paranormal Rockdown. Not sure.
That is probably Chris. His name's Chris
Okay.
Hartle. He is the organizer for an event called Paranormal Rockdown, which
Hey,
is an
what's
event
up,
that
Chris?
I'm going to be one of the presenters at next year.
That's
Oh,
amazing. That's amazing.
So-
Glad to have you guys here.
Yes,
Thank you. We have Larry on here, guys. So if you guys have any questions for him, post it up. I have a hard time seeing, what you do. That's why I have Gwen on right now, because
Right.
she's a real big help with that. My wife is too.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you about that land and stuff like that, Larry. The paranormal aspect of it. Like, first of all, before we ask, how long have you been into the paranormal?
About 2010 ish. I actually started on a web forum, if that kind of dates me a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Back before Facebook was the thing we have today, you had to go to a web forum and you had to talk to each other in threads, which is very similar to comments, but it predates Facebook. And I was very heavy into photography and photo editing and whatnot, and people would be posting photos. Do you remember those ghost app photos where the little girl in the plaid dress? Everyone's like,
Yes.
"It's a ghost." No, it's an app. You're faking this. So I did a lot of that. I did hey, you're faking this. That's BS. Here's me putting that same little girl in my living room. And I'd be like, here's this. You probably did that with fishing wire, whatever, to debunk things. And one group in particular got really mad about it. So they're like, you need to come out and ghost hunt with us. Sure. You know what? Fine. So I went and did that and had my first experience, a place called Scut Mansion in Joliet, Illinois. And all in one night, I got touched, felt a cold spot, saw a shadow black out the light, heard a voice, and then captured all the stuff you'd capture, EVPs and all that. And I was like, okay, I don't think I could debunk all this. So I gave up on trying to disprove the paranormal, and then I spent many years trying to prove the paranormal. And then around 2014 or 15, I gave up on that because I don't need to prove it to myself anymore, and it's not my job to prove it to you. Either you believe it or you don't.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so I just started telling stories, and that's where I'm at now, and I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. So you tend to be in it for a long time. I had my first encounter when I was 10 years old. I'm 47 now. So, and I've always known that my encounter was extremely real. I mean,
Sure.
what I experienced, the whole rule is perception is reality. And of course it is. But I know what I saw and I know what I felt when I was 10 years old. And, no one could take that from me, whether people want to believe it or not. I know what I experienced. And even through ministry and things of that nature, I always knew that the paranormal was there. I always knew there was something else, even if people didn't want to agree with it. There was something else.
Mhm.
So I've been fascinated with it since I was 10 years old. So we're talking 37 years,
Yeah.
since my first encounter, and
Yeah.
I continue going, and it fascinates me. I love the paranormal. I love being a paranormalist. I
Sure.
love being able to help people, and that's where my heart is. But speaking, since you've been in for quite some time too, how much has changed in the paranormal field? Now, I'm not saying like people wise or anything. How
Mhm.
much has changed for you from when you first started getting into the paranormal till now and going?
So in the beginning, technology was very limited.
Yep.
Everyone was using voice recorders. There were no spirit boxes. Cameras were very limited because even a 720p camcorder cost $1,000.
Yep.
So you took a lot of cheap point and shoot cameras. People were converting point and shoot cameras to IR because it was super simple, right? It was easy to remove a filter and make it an IR camera now.
Mhm.
You know, dowsing rods and pendulums and all that stuff were still very popular, but you had to think outside the box for new ways to investigate and interact with spirits. You didn't have the SLS, the spirit boxes, the REM
No.
pods, these super fancy EMF meters. When I got started, the K2 was like $90.
Oh, I know. I
It
know.
was expensive. The Mel meter was ridiculously expensive. But you could get a ghost meter, which is that clear plastic one that lights up when it gets to 1 milligauss.
Oh yeah.
You could get that for 25. So everybody had that one because it was super cheap. Um, but everything, back then was really driven around EVPs.
Yeah. Yep.
So that has changed tremendously.
Yep.
Um,
For sure. For
the,
sure.
the, the biggest
100%.
change.
I've had when I first started, with equipment wise, I still remember using red Solo cups and ping pong balls.
Yeah.
I take the Solo cups and put them upside down, and I take the ping pong and rub it against my head and call static electricity and
Mhm.
put it on top of the red Solo cup. And if an entity or something energy wise came close to it, it would draw the ball to it.
Mhm.
So I mean that's old school, and
Yeah.
like yes or no's, and I mean stuff like that.
The
The
shave and the
way
haircut.
yeah. See, the way we used to communicate, like you said, there wasn't any spirit boxes or anything like that,
No
But we used
tripwires.
to have that old that poltergeist mentality. Oh, I
Yeah.
can hear them through the TV. So I can't
Mhm.
remember how many times I would cut it on and see a white noise, and like, I bet you there's a ghost in there.
Mhm.
And but the communication has gotten so much better.
It has.
EVPs have gotten so much better. Just the technology itself is evolving so well, and I mean that's why it's getting better in that department all over. I mean, do you
Sure.
feel the same? Do
Oh
you
yeah.
feel like it's
I think the increases and how people use video has been a huge boon to the paranormal. I remember getting into it. There was no video. Everything was audio. So if you wanted to share your stuff, you just made a generic image and then put the audio in front of it, and you shared it as just a video of a sound. That doesn't tell you anything about the location, who was doing what was going on around at the time. All you heard was the EVP and that's it.
oh
Well,
yeah,
as people started using video, you can now see what everybody else was doing at the time that was heard. Did
yeah,
somebody was somebody's mouth moving? Could that maybe be debunked now? Did somebody shift their weight and the floor creaked? Maybe that's the footstep that you heard.
yeah, yeah,
Bringing video into it, really helped people know for sure what they were hearing because you could see what was going on as long as the camera was pointing the right way.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think video it started off being something very good, and then it slowly became something very annoying.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, but one of my golden rules, is I tell the team, I'm like, debunk everything first.
Yeah,
Debunk everything obvious first. I think it's smarter to be like that.
sure.
But do you feel that the debunking realm has gotten a little carried away?
So I think I think it's gotten to the point now where the extreme everything is paranormal crowd has the polar opposite of everything needs to be debunked now.
Right, right.
And before debunking was relatively in the middle, like, hey, let's try to talk about what this could be. Well, okay,
Exactly.
well, I don't really see that happening that way, so maybe you do have something paranormal. Well, now it's like I need to know exactly what was going on, and if you can't prove to me that it definitely was a spirit, then you're faking it. Like, whoa, slow down, hold on,
Yeah.
that's really extreme here.
Yep.
We can't prove everything in the paranormal. That's kind of why it's paranormal.
Yeah.
There's no normal means all the time.
That's exactly. I'm so glad you said that.
So, and I realize there's people that have YouTube channels whose sole job is to debunk the paranormal. I was there, remember? That's how I got into this. That's
Yep.
how I started.
That's
So
why I said that.
I can sympathize with these guys, of course. But at the same time, it's like, and this is what I learned. There has to be wiggle room. There has to be a point where you're like, reasonably, I can't figure out how that was faked or maybe even faked by mistake, a coincidence. If I have to go through this elaborate explanation of how this could have been faked, well, it's always the simplest answer. If you have to make this extravagant answer, it's not likely going to be the case.
And perception is reality. I mean,
Yeah.
let's face it. The way that I perceive and my reality are totally different than yours. That doesn't mean that we can't get along, and I see people that want to share their evidence
Mhm.
over social media, put pictures out there on what they perceive as realistic, and
Sure.
they just get shut down, and people are bad mouthing them,
Mhm.
making them feel so insecure
Mhm.
about that they don't even post anymore. And see, I think that's where it's gotten a little out of hand. I do understand debunking.
Yeah.
My first rule is debunk everything obvious first, so
Sure.
I get it, but
But
I
it's how
also
you debunk it that
recognize,
matters.
yeah,
It's
yeah, and
how.
I also recognize that perception is reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a couple groups. I don't really interact too much. But it's a couple people that collect images from people or the internet and then share them and be like, this was sent to me by such and such, and at the time this was taken, nothing was standing there. And then you look at it and you're like, what? That's a person. You could tell that's a person. And then when you go into the comments, there's 75 people talking about what they're picking up from the picture and how this
Oh
was
yeah.
the spirit of shut the hell up, stop it. You're not helping. Stop, stop, stop. So just like there's people that over debunk, there's people that under debunk.
Yeah, absolutely,
Like
100%.
there's no critical thinking in the paranormal social media, and that's part of the reason why I did an ebook about it. It's called Haunted by Likes, the dark side of the paranormal community and social media. And that's one of the main issues are these echo chambers where everything has to be debunked and where nothing can be debunked. If you post a
Mm,
photo in this echo chamber where everything is paranormal, no matter what, you're never going to get a conclusive result.
mm,
And by
mm.
the time I get to a picture like that and I see 75 people talking about how it's grandma and now she's upset with you because you captured her picture, I'm just going to keep scrolling by and I'm not going to help you understand why it's not paranormal because it's not worth it to me.
And I've noticed too that people are not as receptive as they used to, because that if somebody throws anything, like there was a lady that was brand new
Hmm.
into the paranormal,
Hmm.
and she reached out and she posted a picture from her house,
Hmm.
and so the comments started coming in,
Right.
and she messaged me and she was like, is there a reason why so many people are hateful? And I'm like, I am deeply sorry for that. I think it's the fakeness and things like that are going on that
Yeah.
cause people to really have their guard up. And I mean, I do
Right.
understand that aspect, but I mean, this woman is trying to find her place in the field,
Sure. Sure.
and she's not. And if we can't allow her to openly express how she feels, or lets her come in and grow from it without tearing her down, then she's just going to leave and be like, it wasn't worth it in the first place.
See, I think a lot of that falls on these group moderators. And some of the problem are the group moderators because they're the ones sharing these photos, and then just letting people say whatever they want on them.
Mm,
Like sometimes there's no constructive discussion about them. It's oh, that was this, and that's the end of the story. It's like, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Um,
exactly.
but at the other side of it, there's money to be made. And there are people whose sole intent of posting photos and videos are to make money off of them. So
Mm,
that's why, TikTok is the worst. It absolutely the worst because you could steal videos and repost them and do all this crazy stuff. But
mm,
if you pay close attention, you can see where a video cuts. And if a video cuts in the middle of something, it's not real.
yeah.
Anyone that has something legitimate to share would never put a cut in the middle because they know anyone in the paranormal is going to go, I need to see that front to end so I can tell
Yeah.
if anything happened.
Why was it cut? Yep.
Why was it cut? But
Yep.
they don't care about that because they want the views, they want the interactions, and they want to get paid.
Mhm.
Facebook's the same, Instagram's the same, the TikTok. The more interactions and comments you get, the more money you get.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
even if
The
people
algorithm.
argue in your comments, that's a click, that's a watch, that's a comment. It gets me 5 cents. Enough people do that, all of a sudden that video made me $50.
Oh wow. Yeah. No, I get it. I get
So,
it. I
so
get
people
it.
are putting this stuff out knowing full well that it's fake, that it's going to
Mm,
cause arguments, but they're getting paid for it and they don't care.
mm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Gwen, I see comments coming up.
Right.
Let's comment and answer a few of these.
Oh yeah, we got Kenneth Torres. Is it Father Torres?
Hey, Father.
Yeah, he's
How are
here.
you?
Here you go. He's saying that
Oh, yeah.
yeah. You can read it. You can read it, Larry.
Pareidolia is something that even when I got into it, people were talking about it.
Mhm.
We're designed to see faces and things.
Yep.
And
Pareidolia.
my favorite is like when proportionately it doesn't make sense. Like there was a picture I saw today of someone kind of taking a selfie like this, and there's extra space off to the side of them. And like 30 feet away behind them, there's this super tiny little, 3-inch figure that makes no sense for them to be floating 3 inches into the air. And they're all about how that's a spirit and that they feel this, they're doing that. And it's like, no, it's not. That's just the pixels being arranged in a certain way because it's dark, because of the shadowing, because of whatever phone you used. Whatever AI software your phone has, because they all have that now, right? Anything that's new.
Everywhere.
And it just happened to make a shape that looks like that part of my face.
Yep.
And
That's the true definition of perception is reality right there. Pareidolia, that's the perfect example. I've seen the same thing with people it takes pictures of woods, do you see that face in the trees? And I'm like,
leaves.
well, to me, that looks like 2 pine cones in a gap.
Yeah. I love when someone's like, it's standing up in the branches. You can see its face. Like that's a cluster of leaves and the light coming through it. It is not a face. Stop saying everything's a face. Or someone will there'll be a smudge on the glass and they're like, that smudge is a face. Like it's a smudge.
Yep.
Stop saying everything's a ghost because it's not. It makes the things that actually are ghosts difficult to say it's a ghost because everyone's looking at it going, wow, that could be a smudge.
Yep.
Well, if every smudge wasn't a ghost, it'd be a lot easier for us.
And that's what makes people think that the paranormal can all be explained, when you have stuff like that, because if someone can look at a picture and they can possibly see what you see, but explain it, then I mean, that's part of debunking, that's part of understanding, the reality of what's really there. And I think it's more on the way that people handle it and
Sure.
the way that they respond to people. And I get it. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. But to really get on and tear someone down because they think they see something,
Right.
I think it's a little carried away with that. But I do agree. Pareidolia is real. When they see faces and things, like I saw woods or like on a curtain or something like that. I mean, it's
Sure.
everywhere.
Sure.
And people really need to study more into the true definition of pareidolia, the true definition of paranormal investigating, and get out of that YouTube ghost hunting mentality where everything's a demon, and really, really get in there and see what's real, what's authentic, who's real, who's authentic, and go with that, because you'll tend to learn more and be more active in the paranormal field when you're like that.
Sure. Well, and kind of what Father Ken had brought up about manipulating people. There are people who just surf Facebook all day long and look for these photos, and then they'll tell people, I'm a psychic medium, this is what I'm picking up. And then they'll find somebody that believes them. I'm not saying they're not a psychic medium, but they'll find someone that oh, you think that's my grandpa in my picture there, can you tell me more of what you see? And all of a sudden the conversation ends with, well, if you want more information, I can give you a reading for $69.99 per hour. and it's like, there are people out there who are feeding off of the community and others' hard work just to make a buck. And I completely understand that I also fall into that category because I'm a filmmaker. So it's very expensive to make films. So yes, I want people to watch my stuff and to pay to watch my stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm upfront about it. You're going to pay to watch something on Amazon Prime because it says it's $1.99 to watch this. You know what you're getting into. There's no trickery there. If you want to buy my book, everything I wrote in my book, what the price is up front. If you want the book, you buy the book. If you don't, we'll talk about it like on a podcast, and that's cool. But there are people that manipulate others through social media to kind of win them over, and then all of a sudden be like, well, if you want to know more, $15 per minute. Yeah. Okay, Miss Cleo, calm down.
Yeah.
You got Eternal X Wolfpack Paranormal. They're saying the ones like us who take the time to teach and show the new ones what to look for is a benefit for the future of the paranormal. That's true.
And that's what I got out of, because I was tired of trying to convince people that didn't want to be convinced. And they'd ask me these questions, and I'd be like, listen, this is my opinion only. And then they would dig deeper with their own perception. I'm like, listen, if that's what you want to talk about, that's cool. That's not what we started talking about at first. So if you've got more to say, by all means say that. But I'm not here to convince you otherwise. If that's what you want to think, fine.
That's right.
And there are people way smarter than me that are on the scientific side of the paranormal. Let them handle it. They can explain things way better than I can. Let me tell you some cool stories.
Yep.
So,
I see.
Film is different. Artistic freedom, that's powerful statement. That's true too, Father Ken. That's very true.
What do you say?
Go ahead. Ken Notorio says, I think film is different. Artistic freedom and the ability to grasp the audience is powerful. You're making a statement. You're conveying a feeling and a story.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It very much is. And whether or not I'm ethical in the telling of that story says more about me than it does about the story itself. So, when like we did Expedition Eddie, which is our show on the Paraflix Network, we set everything up to where, behind the scenes, the amount of time we had to film at that location was the amount of time you could rent the building for an investigation. So if it's a 4-hour time slot, we had to film everything in 4 hours.
Wow.
And, well, besides the interview, because that's obviously a little bit different, but film the investigation in 4 hours. If it's a 10-hour time slot, well, we're going to take our time a little bit more and we're going to stretch things out a little, but for the most part, we're filming in that time window. And then every session that we film, it was set up to be 10-minute bursts. So we film for 10-ish minutes. There's things to cut out in the beginning and the end, lining the audio up. And sometimes there's a discussion that we cut off because the discussion's not needed. But for the most part, it's like 10 minutes straight. Anything that happens in that 10 minutes on camera, that's the investigation. That's what you see. Anything that happens before, after, in between, that's not filmed, we don't talk about it because it didn't happen on camera. So, in doing it that way, we were one of very few shows that actually showed true investigating.
Nice.
It wasn't us walking around and doing recreations and telling something that already happened. If it happened on camera, perfect, great. If it didn't happen on camera, we'll mention it and then try to springboard off of that during the investigation to get more contact. Thank you, Father Ken.
That's the best way to be.
So, and I've gotten some good results doing things in a more simplistic way. Like, do I want a $550 Ovilus 5 or the Davilus as I call it because it's got Dave Schrader's voice? Hell yeah, I want one. Those things are cool. But do I need one? No, I can communicate very easily with the stuff I have. Yeah. Do I want an SLS? Oh yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to play with. Do I need one? No. I can get something really great, which we were able to do on one of our episodes with the Estes method and a deck of playing cards.
Oh, wow.
So we had the one person, like, they were facing a wall. They can't see anything because it's just wall, and they had the ear coverings on and all that. And about 10 feet away, we had another investigator pulling playing cards and pointing them at the camera in front of her and saying, "What's the number on this card?" And that was all. She didn't say it. She just showed it. And we were able to get Dan, who was under the headphones, to say the number several times.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And even to the point to where when I want to say it was 3 cards. The 3 cards were put down. And then before Jen was able to pull the next card, Dan goes, "Hold." And we're all sitting there like, that's kind of random. What does hold mean? And Steve, who was running the other camera, starts tapping on the cards. Well, when you flipped all the cards over, they all added up to 19. And the spirit that we were talking to, her favorite game to play when she was alive was blackjack.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, is this super concrete evidence? No, it's a little subjective, but boy, does it make for a great story.
Oh,
and now the next team that goes in, they can play off of that. Have a good night, Father Ken. So, that's why I like telling stories. I don't need to be able to prove anything to anybody. Take what I've done and continue it further.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised how many people go, "Hey, well, they tell me this. I watched your episode on, Broadhead Manor, and I saw you guys were in this room and you had, started the conversation about this. My team continued that conversation, and it's like we picked up where you left off. They were answering the same way they were with you. Cool. Perfect. What did you figure out?" "Well, we found out the person you were talking to is probably this lady. And then we went and did the research, and everything that she said to you and she said to us ties with her history we found." Perfect. My job is
so
done.
It all lines up. That's perfect. That's perfect. Good night. Yeah. Good night, Father Ken. It was good. It was good seeing you, and God bless you. And I'll be talking to you very soon. Okay. I think it's fascinating that you talk about, like doing the cards. And I mean, that is a very good way to, I mean, like, I guess you can guess. And if you, but that's a lot harder to try to debunk and say, "Oh, that's just camera trickery or they're speaking to one another. That's a lot more difficult because you're literally got 52 cards and you pick a few of them and
not
one
52.
person can see them.
Not 52, because red doesn't show under IR, so you have to pull all the red out.
Oh wow! Okay,
only the blacks. Unless you say the number, then you could use red. But if I'm holding the camera up or the card to the camera, the red will not show.
Not an IR at all.
Not an IR. It'll be the same color as the card.
Wow. Okay.
So you have to use the black. And then another thing we did was we pulled some of the face cards. So there was a couple in there, but not all of them. So it was the majority of the numbers. And, they're obviously shuffled, so it's not like they're going in numerical order.
Mm.
And then the hold, I don't know. That was weird.
That's awesome.
So, but if anyone watching does want to do playing cards like that, make sure to get the large, bold-faced cards. They show up on camera a lot better. And if you can get them all in black, that's where you want to go. Because then you can still ask, what suit is this card? And they can say heart, but the camera can still see it.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation if you want to do the card trick. Large, bold-faced fonts, and then all black.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
And
that's amazing. You remind me.
Get a matte too, because if they're glossy, they reflect. You don't want the reflection; you want the matte.
Yeah. Yep. You remind me of my friend. I'm sure you guys know him, John Huntington. He makes spirit boxes and stuff like that. Well, he made a spirit box, and how he got me was he was doing a session on the spirit box, and he used a card deck, and he would hold it up, and he said, "What card am I holding up?" And sure enough, it would come right through.
Yeah,
and he has a famous video where he's cooking bacon.
Okay.
And he's flipping the bacon. He says, "What am I cooking?" And you can clear as day right over the sweep. It says, "Bacon. I love bacon."
We were in a location called Conover Square. It's an old piano factory in Illinois that was converted into like an antique mall, but it's the size of a city block. Pianos are big. When you're making a lot of pianos, you need a lot of space.
Yeah,
well,
no kidding.
Now it's just a gigantic haunted building. So there's a museum space in there where they have all manner of old farm tools and wagons and all this stuff. We're in there with actually Chris Fleming. Chris Fleming was leading the event and I was filming with him. And we start talking about food because we're talking to each other, but the spirit box is still going. We're kind of ignoring it. We're just kind of chit-chatting. We're talking about dinner because his event had a dinner beforehand. And then you came from the restaurant to the location, which, by the way, is my favorite kind of event. If anyone wants me for an event, please include dinner.
Everybody wants food.
Shameless. So we're just talking about it. And then the spirits start chiming in about food. It's not that we're interrogating them. It's not, an interview of the spirits. We're just having a chit chat. And they're like, "Oh, I want to talk about food too." Who wouldn't want to talk about food? We're people. We love food.
Yep.
They love food too, especially because they can't eat it anymore. But let me tell you, they have opinions. There was one spirit we talked to. They did not like Pepsi. Didn't like Pepsi. I'm like, "Well, what do you drink?" And it goes, "Milk." No, thank you. But they don't like Pepsi. That's got to be a newer spirit. Now we can narrow down an age range because they don't like Pepsi.
Right.
But we weren't investigating. We were just BSing the whole time.
And it's still picked up like that. See that's the credibility I'm talking about right there. Like stuff that you don't expect. You can ask the typical questions and stuff like that. But when you start getting something, when you're having a conversation with someone else and it's picking up, that's way more credible. I wish more people would tell about situations like that.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many spirits love hearing their own story. Because no one tells their stories. Especially if it's not like, a museum where someone tells their story all the time. You go somewhere where it's seldom told. The spirit loves when you tell their story, and sometimes they'll correct you if you tell it wrong. Other times they get mad if you tell it wrong, and then they swear at you. But for the most part, I've had a lot of success with that, where I'll change a detail knowing full well what the real answer is, and they'll go, "No, stop."
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
What's wrong? What did I get something wrong? Wrong. What did I get wrong? And then it'll some way in like one or two words say what I was supposed to say, and I'll be like, as a matter of fact, that's actually true. I changed that because of the spirits, and look, we got them to interact with us. So these are little tricks that I do for like events where I'm
That's
leading
awesome.
investigations. I'll tweak something a little bit and see if the spirit will answer about it.
Yep.
And then if they don't, at the end, I'll be like, oh, by the way, when I said that this was built in 1906, it was actually 1908. I was trying to see if the spirit would correct me.
That's cool.
Because otherwise people will think I don't know what I'm talking about because the date's wrong.
We got a couple comments.
Go ahead.
The Wolfpack Paranormal, he said, we played poker in Bell Mansion and had a REM pod between the four of us, and each of us had a light the spirit would pick who would win. That's pretty cool.
So we had something similar, but not the same. We did ours with K2s because K2s are super easy to get to light up.
Yes.
Especially get to the yellow light. It doesn't take very much. It's not very hard. So we would do the same thing. We'd have K2s in front of us, and then we'd ask them to light up whose turn was next. And sometimes they would do it, sometimes they wouldn't. But it's always like, all right, who's next? Oh, cool. Your turn. So, it's the out of the box thinking that gets you the really cool things.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it sounds like that's why you have the success that you do, because it is your out of the box thinking. Like you've given the audience like several ideas, for future investigations that they can go on, that they can try some stuff that it worked for you and it may work for them too.
Sure. Well, and how expensive is a deck of cards?
I know.
All black, matte, and then solid, bold, large print, maybe $15.
Yeah,
just
maybe.
Because it's a very specific card for the camera. If you're not filming, who cares? Just get a regular deck of cards.
Right.
But $5 for a cheap deck, anyone can get a deck of cards, and just keep it in your kit. You never know when you're going to need it.
That's right. That's
or
awesome, man.
You can do what I do, and you can mess with the psychic mediums, and they'd be like, "Hey, turn around. What's this card?" And then see what they say, just to have fun with them.
That's awesome. That's
you
awesome.
Never know. You never know.
I love the idea that you guys have. You talk about doing film work and stuff like that. I tell you what, Larry, there was a producer that filmed one of my cases, my client's case, and they filmed with him for 2 days. And I was like, well, they're not going to have to film with us a whole lot, because they wanted to see what got done about it, how the issue was resolved, what happened, stuff like that.
Sure.
And I was like, man, this shouldn't be any more than an hour or two. 5 hours later, 5 hours later, we were still wrapping things up. And I looked at my wife and I said, because this show is going to air in February. So, and I looked at my wife and I'm like, I am so thankful that I don't have to do this every single day.
Yeah. I just wrapped filming on a doc the last weekend of October. And that was, long story short, we're filming about the Watsika Wonder House. It's the first documented spiritual possession in the country, the United States. And we, in the history, there's cases where like the family did seances and all this stuff associated with the miracle. So we decided to hold our own seance. Well, anyone can hold a seance. You gathered, 10, 15 people, you got a big seance, right? Well, how do we make this a special seance? We gather 130 people, and it's a 130 person seance.
Oh, wow.
In the yard of this property where this big seance was held, and we're trying to conduct our own miracle. See what we can get from a very well-known psychic medium. Her name is Diet, my best friend. And of the very few psychic mediums where I would go, oh yeah, she's good. She's at the top of the list. So we basically throw her on a table with 10 people and we say, go. And she said some of the wildest things. But Neil, who was leading the questioning for the seance, he would start asking the question, and Diet would say the answer before the question was asked. And watch the person's face go, like they'd totally freak out because that's the very specific answer they were looking for. And it was just nuts. So
have you found success like in bigger seances and stuff like that? Have you guys gotten, because I remember I was on one of your lives and you had just got done filming a seance, and you said there were lots of them, like lots of people.
We had 20 to 30 people interact with the medium. 20 to 30 people got the answers, or whether they wanted the answer or not, they got the question answered. Some people it was a hard truth, but for others it was the closure they needed. And in us filming this and then kind of looking back, we're like, a lot of people got closure. A lot of people left saying they felt better than when they arrived. So that's why we started looking at this, like, did we conduct a miracle? Is this the second miracle on this property now? Because people left feeling great. And I kind of dig that. That's going to be a great story.
And I was talking to you, you were wore out, I mean, you could just tell. Your hat was up on your head. You were like, I am tired. And I saw it in you, I saw it. But I can only imagine, sitting there. And even if I was skeptic, sitting there and seeing things get answered that no one else could have possibly known.
Yeah.
And things get answered, and you see people, like a revelation come upon people, or, like answers, closure, like you said. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine, what that would really be like to someone who came in there with a pretty closed off mind.
Sure. Well, and while, yes, we have this amazing story, this amazing miracle, whatever you want to call it. Let's look at it from the other side. We have to film it. Yeah. So, while on screen it looks like, it wasn't all that hard. You got all these cool camera shots and everything. In reality, it took us 3 filming dates to film all of that. And each of those 3 dates of only filming were 12+ hour days. Oh, and then the seance was on a Saturday. Neil and I were setting up the house, the security cameras, the buildings, the event on Thursday. So for us, it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday to get everything ready just to film the seance.
Yeah.
And then that's not going to count the 100 hours of editing after the fact.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, Larry, listen, my producer's telling me we're right about time. And listen, brother, I would love to have you back for a round 2, because I've got so many more questions. I think the audience has so many more questions. But man, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this. It's people like you that's going to make this show great. That's going to make this whole industry great, and I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me, and just shoot me some dates and we'll figure out the part 2.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for that.
Sounds good to me.
Have a good night,
all right,
guys.
Brother. Hey, you have a great night. Okay,
you too.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. There you have it. That is our podcast for tonight. I thank you all for being there. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all the comments and the messages, but as you can see, we got into some very like heavy conversations there. And I want to be able to answer your questions, and he wants to be able to answer your questions. So we're gonna look on and we're gonna see exactly what you guys said, and we're gonna try our best to really answer everything. But I appreciate you guys being with us tonight. It was a pleasure being here, and I thank all of you who participated in tonight's show. And tune in next week. I got another awesome guest. Mondays at 7 p.m. We are Dark Society Paranormal Podcast, and I'm signing off. Be blessed always, and stay spooky. Peace.